Here are the top 10 greatest Game Boy games of all time, according to fans of the Game Boy. Number 10 is Gargoyle's Quest. There seems to be at least one Capcom game on every single one of these lists I make, and for good reason. They are proficient at making games that have a high graphical fidelity for whichever system they are on, interesting game mechanics, and as you can see from my gameplay here, a high level of difficulty. This one is a spin-off of the Ghosts and Goblins series, and it mixes overhead exploration with side viewing action, where you have the ability to grab onto walls and do a limited amount of flying. Gargoyle's Quest ended up being a hit, and sequels to it came to the NES and the Super NES. Number 9 is Kirby's Dream Land. At last count, there were 41 different games with the word Kirby in the title. That's a lot of fucking games, and they all exist because of this one, the very first Kirby game. The marshmallow-like design of Kirby himself was supposed to be a placeholder for a more detailed design later on in development, but the programmers fell in love with the way he looks. Regardless of its history, this game makes the list mainly because it plays well, even today, despite the fact that it's missing the copying ability that the series was known for. You are basically spitting and swallowing the entire game, which I could make a crude joke about, but I would never do that on this channel. So how did I come up with this list? I sought out places across the internet where people were talking about their favorite Game Boy games. Those places were Reddit, Facebook, game site message boards, YouTube videos, and comments on YouTube videos. I even asked my own audience on this community post what their favorite games for the Game Boy were. I took a record of the games that people were mentioning, and if they gave them rankings, I recorded that as well. I only did this for games that were playable on the OG Game Boy, which typically come in gray or black cartridges. Clear cartridges only run on the Game Boy Color, so those were not included in my data. And it goes without saying, Game Boy Advance games were also not included. It was a manual process that took hours, no AI was used. I ended up collecting 1,000 mentions, and after doing some analysis on it, I came up with this list that I'm showing you today. My own opinion had no bearing on these rankings. In the end, it's just for your entertainment, and there's no need to have a meltdown in the comments section. Number 8 is Metroid 2: Return of Samus. Your job is to land on a mysterious planet and exterminate all the Metroids living on it, so they can never be used for evil purposes again. There are 47 of them, and you have to systematically hunt them down by exploring all around the huge game map. As with all the other games in the series, you will gain new abilities along the way and become stronger overall. It's a formula that works well. Although there's not as much screen space as the original game on the NES, there are a few things this one does better, such as having the ability to crouch down and the ability to hop while you are a ball. Number 7 is Wario Land: Super Mario Land 3. I imagine the way the title is presented on the box was intentional. It helped get sales from people who enjoyed the first two Mario Land games, but it emphasized Wario Land to let people know it was going to be different from those Mario games. Wario isn't out to battle evil, he is evil, and his goal in the game is to loot an entire island of treasures. His main attack is ramming, and there are different types of helmets he can put on to give him additional abilities. The game is noticeably long, but does have a battery backup to save your progress. The amount of treasures you accumulate affect what kind of ending you get. Overall, it's a competently programmed game that is a lot of fun, and playing as a squat, evil man will put a smile on people's faces. Number 6 is Super Mario Land. I can speak from personal experience here because I was lucky enough to play this game before it even came out in America. Thanks to my friend whose family had purchased a Game Boy while they were in Japan. It's always good to have a rich friend, right? Anyway, I could not put this game down. I found it uplifting to play because of how cheerful the music was and the cuteness of the characters. I didn't care that it took some liberties with the norms of the Mario universe by having Egyptian-themed stages and stuff like that, because I was just a dumb kid who simply enjoyed the fact that he can sit and play Mario on the sidewalk. Number 5 is Pokemon Red or Blue version. When I was collecting the data regarding people's favorite Game Boy games, it got messy when people mentioned the Pokemon games. Because some people would just mention Red, while others would just mention Blue. Others would say Red and Blue, and put that into one spot on their top 10. It got messier because others would say Gen 1 Pokemon games, which means Red, Blue, and Yellow. Others would just say Yellow. Finally, there's a crowd that would just say the word Pokemon, such as my favorite games were the Pokemon games, which I assume would mean all the games I just mentioned along with Silver and Gold. They could have also meant the Pokemon collectible card game or Pokemon Pinball, but maybe they didn't mean those. It was a lot to clean up and it took an hour or two to straighten out. I decided to put anyone who said any combination of Red or Blue into one category, essentially treating those two games as conjoined twins, which they are, and that was enough to give them 5th place on this list. I put Yellow into its own category. For the people who said Gen 1, I prorated them into the 2 categories I just mentioned. Finally, I made a 3rd category for people who said Silver and Gold. So anyway, I don't need to describe Pokemon for you because you probably already know all about it, so let's move on. Number 4 is Donkey Kong. This is sometimes referred to as Donkey Kong 1994 to differentiate it from the arcade game. At first, it seems like a port of the arcade, but once you get 5 minutes into it, it turns into a platformer/puzzle game. That may scare some people off, but if you stick to it, you'll come to realize that the puzzle elements are not overly complicated. So you can just kind of chill and enjoy the game while your son yells at Fortnite in the other room. FYI, if you happen to have the Super Game Boy, you can play this game on the Super Nintendo with specialized borders, which goes to show that this is yet another high-effort title from Nintendo. Number 3 is Mortal Kombat 4. This is a very impressive port of the arcade game. The backgrounds are detailed, and the fighters are big, recognizable, and packed with a variety of moves. To top it off, the music is worthy enough to be listened to in the car. Actually, this is a fake out. I insert these into my top 10 list from time to time to lighten up the mood. Mortal Kombat 4 does not belong on this list, and I doubt anyone has played the soundtrack for it in the car. Number 3 is actually Tetris. For the Game Boy's release in North America and Europe, they were going to make Super Mario Land the pack-in title, but they came to realize that Tetris would appeal to a wider audience, so they packed that one in instead, and the rest was history. If you had a Game Link cable with 2 Game Boys and 2 copies of the game, you can play against each other. Nowadays, there's a lot of ways to play Tetris. You can even play on the side of a building, but there's no denying how important a release this was at the time, and how well the dopamine triggering gameplay holds up today. Number 2 is Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. There was so much variety in the Mario series at the time. You had 3 very different games on the Game Boy, which themselves were very different from the Super Mario 3 and Mario World that were popular on the consoles at the time. This particular one was very graphically impressive. It's hard to believe it's even running on the same system that the first Mario Land was running on. The sprites in the stages are massive in size, just like me. This was the world's first introduction to Wario, who serves as the antagonist that you have to defeat. To get to him, you have to locate the 6 golden coins, and each one of those is guarded by a boss. It's just a well-rounded game that busted through people's perceived limits of what's possible on the Game Boy. Before we get to number 1, I want to go over some honorable mentions. These are games that barely missed being in this top 10. I'm just going to read them off in no particular order. Operation C. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Fall of the Foot Clan. Final Fantasy Adventure. Castlevania 2: Belmont's Revenge. Pokemon Yellow Version, Special Pikachu Edition. Kirby's Dream Land 2. Dr. Mario. And finally, Donkey Kong Land. And here are some honorable mentions. These are games that barely missed being in the honorable mentions. There were over 1,000 games playable on the original Game Boy, so you gotta figure a lot of these that you see on the screen right here are actually bangers for being so far up above the other ones. And now for the game that people mention most often when discussing the best Game Boy games, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Want to hear something crazy? There is no Zelda in this game. Yeah, that's right, the princess does not make an appearance at all. I guess she's in another castle or something. This time around, Link has washed ashore on an island with a giant egg, and he needs to hunt down musical instruments and use those instruments to awaken a creature that is said to be within the egg. As evidenced by that bizarre plotline, this game takes some big risks with the established Zelda formula, but it pulls it off with the incredible triforce of music, graphics, and gameplay. Link's Awakening is one of the many Zelda games to appear on my various top 10 lists, so be sure to check some of those out if you're curious. Thank you for watching.